Hi, my name is Jessie Biddle, and for my capstone project, I made a sleep and pulse monitor. Here is the pulse monitor that is attached to a patient's finger using, I found a Band-Aid was the best way to secure it so it could get an accurate reading. I then also used the accelerometer and the piezo element, which recorded movement over the sampling period. I added an LED here, which indicated every time a pulse was detected. While the sample was being taken, the pulse would flash as each heartbeat was detected. This is a flowchart for how my program works. Using threading, data is collected from the 3 sensors simultaneously and then stored in 3 separate arrays. The data is then plotted. For the pulse sensor, I have a program that calculates the beats per minute and then returns the patient's average heart rate and a conclusion on whether the heart rate is in a low range, normal range, or high range. For the 2 motion sensors, this data is pooled together and processed and summed, which produces a value that indicates the overall level of movement for the patient as either low, medium, or high. Then the program ends. To measure the pulse, 2 separate arrays are created, one for the pulse sensor data and one for time. A value called beats is originally sent to no, and T0 represents the current time. Then a loop is performed n times, and at the beginning the pulse is read, the time is recorded, and these 2 values are stored in arrays. If the pulse value is above a certain threshold, and the previous reading was not above that threshold, then the number of beats increases by 1. This allows me to know how many overall beats was recorded in the sampling period. The loop is then paused for 20 milliseconds and repeated until n runs out. These are all saved in NPZ arrays. To calculate the beats per minute, the data is read from the pulse file beats array. The first value in the beats array represents the total time that the sample is taken. The second value in the beats array represents the number of beats that was recorded. By dividing 60 by the total time, I get the percentage that the sample is taken in regards to a minute. I then multiply this value times the beats recorded, which gives me the value in beats per minute. If this value is above 100, then the patient's heart rate was on the high end. If this is below 60, their heart rate was on the low end. Otherwise, it was in the normal range. For the accelerometer and piezo element, 2 separate arrays are created, one for the data from each of these files and one for the time. These files are used to plot the data, as well as the absolute value from each of these files is taken and all summed, which gives me a value that can be used to determine the overall level of movement. These values are also stored in NPZ files. Here we have the pulse sensor connected to a fingertip using a Band-Aid. And we can run the program. And the LED light flashes in sync as the heartbeats are detected. This is what the output of my program looks like. First, it tells you what your average heart rate was in beats per minute. It also tells you if this is within the normal range. Below 60 would be low and above 100 would be high. This also tells you whether your level of movement was low, medium, or high. You can see the heart rate during the sample period is depicted here. And if we scroll down, we can see the data from the 2 motion monitors, which is the accelerometer and the piezo element. These graphs confirm that movement was in fact very low over the time that the data was sampled. One of the issues I ran into during my project was that the original pulse sensor I used broke. The connections were really small and easily broke off. I got a second pulse sensor, and this one I wrapped with some putty so that the wires would stay stronger.